First, we have to recite Dukkha Ariya Sicca Pali. Can you follow me? Kataminja Bhikkhave Dukkha Ariya Sicca Jativi Dukkha Jarabi Dukkha Maranambi Dukkha Soka Paridewa Dukkha Domana Subhaya Sabi Dukkha Abhiyehi Samyoga Bi Dukkha Biyehi Vibhyoga Bi Dukkha Yambejana Labadi Dambi Dukkha Sanketena Pinju Badane Kanda Dukkha. We recite together. Kataminja Bhikkhave Dukkha Riya Sicca Jativi Dukkha Jarabi Dukkha Maranambi Dukkha Soka Paridewa Dukkha Domana Subhaya Sabi Dukkha Abhiyehi Samyoga Bi Dukkha Biyehi Vibhyoga Bi Dukkha Yambejana Labadi Dambi Dukkha Sanketena Injubadane Kanda Dukkha. Translation, follow me. And what bhikkhus is the noble truth of suffering? Birth is suffering, aging is suffering, death is suffering, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and excessive despair are suffering. Association with the dislike is suffering. Separation from the liked is suffering. Not to get what one wishes, that also is suffering. In brief, the 5 aggregates of clinging are suffering. Today we have to listen Jati, Dukkha, and Kamma. Jati, rebirth, Dukkha, suffering, and Kamma, deeds. Kamma gives results. It follows that when karma is good, then it will produce good results, it will produce happy results. And when the karma is bad, when the karma is unwholesome, it will produce bad results or painful results. That is what we call the law of karma. That there is what we call karma or volition. And that karma gives results in the future. So we all Buddhists believe in this law of karma. The understanding of the law of karma taught us self-reliance and self-responsibility because we enjoy or we suffer as a result of what karma we did in the past. So whatever we enjoy in this life is actually the result of good karma we did in the past. And whatever we suffer here is also the result of bad karma we did in the past. So we are not to blame anybody else for our suffering or failure in this life. If we want to blame at all, we can blame our own karma. So karma is one that produces results. And since it is we who do the karma, we are the ones who cause the results to be produced. So we are the master of our own future. We can shape our future lives. In this respect, we are free and do not have to rely on any other person for our good future, because we alone can create our future, either good or bad. When we understand that we alone are responsible for our own suffering or happiness, we know we can shape our future so that we get happiness only and not suffering. If we do not want bad results, or if we do not want painful results, we just need to avoid which will give painful results. That means the knowledge of the law of karma will teach us to abstain from doing what is bad, what is painful to oneself, and what is harmful to other beings. So we can improve our lives here, and also we can shape our lives in the future, because we know or we understand the law of karma. Now karma gives results. Whenever there is karma, there will be results. We cannot get away from the consequences of the karma we did in the past unless we become Buddhas or we become Arhants. So when a person is reborn in another life, that rebirth is the result of karma he did in the past. In the immediate past life or in the life before the past. So when a person is said to be reborn, he or she is reborn as the result of his or her karma he or she did in the past. According to the teaching of the Theravada Buddhism, rebirth, jati, immediately follows death, marana. After marana, jati, rebirth, immediately follows. There is no time gap between death and in one life and rebirth in the next life. There's no time interval between death in one life and rebirth in the next life. So according to Abhidhamma, rebirth immediately follows death. But we must understand that rebirth in the next life is not the results of the death of the previous life. Rebirth in the next life is the result of karma in the past. Quite often, people misunderstand this fact. People think that rebirth is produced by death. We can say that rebirth is conditioned by death also when we mean that death consciousness disappear so that rebirth consciousness or relinquishing consciousness can arise. It is called proximity condition in Patana, the seventh book of the Abhidhamma. Death is just one moment in life and the last moment. Before that last moment, the dying man's mind is occupied with some kinds of objects presented to his or her mind by his or her karma. And the quality of these objects, nimitta, play an important or rather decisive role in conditioning the rebirth. So karma in the past life, immediate past life, or the life before the past produce rebirth in the next immediate life. Actually, disappearing of one moment and arising of another moment go on even when we are living. According to the teaching of the Buddha, we are being reborn and dying at every moment of our lives. We reborn and we dying at every moment. So when I talk, you hear my words, the words disappear very quickly. You are listening to the words also comes and goes very quickly. So at every moment, there is a new pair of mind and matter arising and then disappearing immediately. In the next moment, there is a new pair of mind and matter arising and then disappearing. So it goes on and on and on like that even when we are living. So if you can understand that, even in our lives, one moment of mind and matter follows another moment of mind and matter without any interruption or any time gap between the two. we can understand this life and the next life. So actually, this life and the next life are different only by one moment. At the moment of death, we call this life. At the next moment, which comes immediately, we call it the new life or next life. That is because we use the terms conventionally. So actually, the death in one life and rebirth in another are just the same as one moment following another moment during our lifetime. So 1 second after 12 midnight of the 31st of December, we call it a new day, a new month, or a new year. But in fact, there is just 1 second difference between the old year and the new year. And actually, we cannot say that the previous moment is the old year and the next moment is the new year. But we agree to call it the old year and the next year or the new year. And then we say we are in the new year, but actually we are only 1 second away from midnight. In the same way, when beings are reborn, when we are reborn after death in one life, we are just one moment after death. So the arising and disappearing of mind and matter go on and on and on until one becomes an arahant or a Buddha and one dies. Until that moment, this arising and disappearing of mind and matter, we go on and on and on incessantly. So here also the rebirth is produced by Kamma or Sankara. So we can do something about Kamma in this life so that we are reborn in a better existence. Now when we talk about rebirth, jati, people want to know what it is that is reborn there. This we answer with maxim, neither he nor she, neither he nor another, neither he nor another. So the person who is said to be reborn in the next life is neither the same person that died in the previous life, nor is he a totally new person, totally independent of the being who died in the previous life. So that is a maxim we use, neither he nor another. At the moment of rebirth, what happened is karma produced a state of mind and some material properties, and that we call rebirth, jati. So mind and matter that are produced or that arise at the moment of rebirth are not something that is carried over from the previous life. According to the teaching, nothing moves from this life to the next life. So when you practice rising and falling of the abdomen, rising and totally disappear, rising. The beginning of the rising totally disappear. The beginning of the rising do not follow to the middle of the rising. Middle of the rising appear and disappear immediately. The middle of the rising do not follow to the end of the rising of the abdomen. Nothing moves from this life to the next life, the same. But as a result of something that beings did in the previous life, they are produced the results in the future. So they are connected as cause and effect. They are related as cause and effect. We may think of a rosary or a necklace. There are beads on them, and these beads are different from one another, and they are distinct too. But there is a string going through those beads, so we think that it is a series of beads, but actually only the individual beads are real one. In the same way, mind and matter at every moment is new, arising at every moment. But there is something like string going through the succession of arising of mind and matter. There is relationship as cause and effect. So when an effect is produced by a certain cause, then it must have some features of the cause in it. In that way, there are no chaotic arising and disappearing. And there's no such thing as my karma will give result to you, or your karma will give result to me. No such thing. Because there's a line of relationship of cause and effect going through arising and disappearing of mind and matter at every moment. So now when mind and matter produced or mind and matter arise at the moment of jati, rebirth, Buddha called jatipi dukkha. Rebirth is suffering. It is a word that most people don't like. Some people always told, you Buddhists talk all about suffering all the time. According to the teaching of the Buddha, that jati, rebirth, is also suffering. To be born as a human beings, to be born as a celestial beings, or to be reborn as an animal is also suffering. So according to the Buddha's teaching, everything in the world is suffering. Here, first, we must understand the word suffering, dukkha. So we go back to the words dukkha. Because dukkha sija we need to understand. real dukkha. Practically you are observing the whole day, the whole month, the whole 2 months. You are trying to the true nature of dukkha. Dukkha, the words, because sometimes the translation are not adequate. They do not cover the range of meanings that was covered by the original words. Now, whenever we hear the words dukkha in Pali, our minds go to just pain. When we say there is suffering, we think that only pain is suffering. There is pain, physical pain or mental pain, there is suffering. That is very easy to see. But what the Buddha meant by dukkha is much deeper than that. So according to the Buddha, everything in this world is suffering. Even when you are enjoying yourself, enjoying good relationship, enjoying sensual pleasures, these pleasures are themselves termed dukkha by the Buddha. Why? We must understand that the criterion taught by the Buddha for something being dukkha. Now Buddha said, whatever is impermanent is dukkha. So we must follow that. Whatever is impermanent is suffering. Can we find anything that is permanent in this world? Can we find anything that just arises and does not disappear? Nothing. There's nothing that lasts forever. Everything must come to an end simply because it has a beginning. So whenever there is a beginning, there is an end. There is a lot of nature. So true nature of the rupa, you observe very closely, rising, rising, rising. If your concentration getting more strengthened, you can see many rising in the rising of the abdomen. So you cannot escape that. We are born as human beings. We started as human beings. We will not live forever. One day we will die because that is the end of our lives. So whenever there is a beginning, there is an end, and something that is a beginning and an end cannot be said to be permanent. It is impermanent. And Buddha said, whatever is impermanent is dukkha. That means it is oppressed by arising and disappearing. It is bombarded by arising and disappearing, or it is tormented by arising and disappearing. Being constantly oppressed by arising and disappearing is what Buddha meant as dukkha. Not just pain, not just sorrow, not just depression and others in the mind of suffering, but whether it is pleasure or it is sorrow, everything that has a beginning and an end according to that criterion dukkha, because there is a sense of being of oppressed by arising and disappearing. It will become more pronounced when you practice meditation. When you practice meditation, you try to be mindful of whatever objects is at the present moment. So whatever objects, you keep your mind on it, arises and disappear. It will not stay for a long time. For example, you hear my voice now. I'm talking. You are hearing these words one after another. They just come and go, come and go. So when you are aware of every object that you observe, come and go, you can get that sense of being oppressed by rising and disappearing. Even when you are listening to me now, you are being bombarded by arising and disappearing. You are not the same person now as you were 5 minutes ago or 10 minutes ago. So there is this arising and disappearing going on all the time. There's no gap between these. We are practicing this truth of suffering. So we are constantly and continuously oppressed by this arising and disappearing. That is what Buddha meant by dukkha. So dukkha Ariya Sijam, Ariya Buddha and Arahants understand this truth of suffering very clearly and completely. But due to our level, we understand some kinds of suffering. So if we understand this, we can understand that all 5 aggregates are suffering. So noble truth of suffering, path is suffering, decay is suffering, and in the end, Sankitena Pinjuparana Khana Dukkha. In brief, the 5 aggregates are suffering. 5 aggregates means everything in the world. So everything in the world has a beginning and an end. So everything is suffering. So when we try to understand the teaching of the Buddha, especially the first noble truth, we must understand the suffering on this level, not just on the popular level. Now, when explaining the first noble truth, Buddha said, Jatipi dukkha, birth is suffering, jarapi dukkha, aging is suffering, maranampi dukkha, death is suffering, and so on. But they are not difficult to understand. Without meditation, we can understand that they are all suffering. But at last, Buddha said, Sankhetena Pinjupadane Khanda Dukkha. In brief, all five aggregates of clinging are suffering. That means everything in the world is suffering. That is what many people cannot accept. Many people do not understand what Buddha really meant. When Buddha said, everything in the world is suffering, or all five aggregates of clinging are suffering, we had in mind that definition of suffering or dukkha, that is being constantly oppressed by arising and disappearing. There is not a single physical or mental phenomenon that can escape this bombardment by arising and disappearing. That is why everything in the world is said to be suffering. So when we try to understand the teaching of the Buddha, teaching of suffering, we try to understand in this way. If we do not understand on this level, we may just not understand the Buddha's teaching, or we may accuse Buddha of being a pessimist. But Buddha was not a pessimist, nor was he an optimist. Buddha was a realist. Buddha taught us what is real. He did not cover something up just to console us, just to console all beings. When Buddha found that the world was suffering, he just said that the world was suffering. But the good thing is that Buddha did not stop there. He said that there was a cause for this suffering. And best of all, he said that there was a way which can lead to the cessation of suffering, or there was a way which can lead to get out of this suffering. Just as a clever physician would point out that you have a disease and there is a cause for this disease, and that this disease could be cured, and there is the medicine to take. So Buddha said, you all beings are suffering. There is a cause of suffering, which is craving. And there is a cessation of this cessation of this suffering. There is nirvana. And that cessation of suffering can be achieved through the practice of middle way or through the practice of Eightfold Path. Right understanding, right thinking, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Now you are practicing. to achieve the cessation of suffering. So Buddha did not teach us just suffering, just dukkha. But Buddha taught us how to get rid of suffering also. If we follow the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path, we will also be able to end this suffering. So it is up to us whether we want to get out of this suffering or not. And if we really want to get out of suffering, we need to follow the fourth noble truth, which is the way that leads to the cessation of suffering. Now you are practicing the fourth noble path, noble truth. Sila, Samadhi, Pinya, morality, concentration, or wisdom, or this Satipatthana method, observing every phenomena occurring at the six senses. You are practicing. This is the way that leads to the cessation of suffering. So when we study the Buddha's teaching or try to understand the Buddha's teaching, we do not try just to understand them. We need to practice them also. So Buddha's teaching are like medicine. The medicine will be effective only if you take it. You may have bottles of medicine at home, but if you do not take them, you will not get cured of the disease you want to cure. So the effectiveness of medicine lies in being taken. Now you are taking this medicine every moment, rising, falling, sitting, touching, walking, stretching, bending, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. Whatever objects arise, you are observing. So that is taking the medicine. If you do not take them, you will not get the results of that medicine. In the same way, Buddha teaching are good to understand, but that is not enough. We have to put this teaching into practice, or we have to follow the teaching so that we are able to get rid of suffering or get rid of all mental defilements. So you are practicing diligently. That is the qualities of Dharma we carry on. One of the quality is open ego. Dharma can be kept in our mind. So that is why in the teaching, practice is very important. Only through practice we can achieve what was achieved by the Buddhas and the Arahants. Now we have tried to understand what Kamma, what Sankhara is, and also Jati, rebirth, that is the result of Kamma or Sankhara. And also we have tried to understand that the results of Kamma, however good it may be, is actually suffering. So to understand the noble truth of suffering, the five aggregates of clinging are suffering. So now you are observing every phenomena occurring at the six senses, seeing, hearing, etc. So that is, you are observing the five aggregates of clinging. Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, and Vijnana. These are the same as Kaya Nupassana, Vedana Nupassana, Citta Nupassana, Dhamma Nupassana. All the same. Four foundations of mindfulness you are practicing. All five aggregates of clinging you are observing. All seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and knowing you are observing. All are the same. That is, you are trying to understand the true nature of suffering that area should know. So to understand like areas, you are practicing. So we have to stop our discourse for today. May all yogis understand the truth of suffering clearly, and may all yogis be liberated from all kinds of suffering by practicing vipassana meditation, by observing every phenomena occurring at the six senses diligently. May all yogis be liberated from all suffering. May all yogis realize the real peace in the very near future.